I set out a handout there on your tables just for your information. It's a general thing I got off of the Keene website. Keene is actually the Kern Foundation that Kern family started, and they've got more things going on than just Keene, but Keene is the focus on, and I don't want to make it's engineering entrepreneurship, but obviously not just engineering. Dave, you're involved, others are involved that aren't engineers, so even though it's called Keene and Engineering Unleashed and so on, think STEM, think beyond STEM. It's just entrepreneurial mindset unleashed. But you can see in this handout, and I do want to give credit, Bonnie Bachman and John. Many of you guys know John Lovett. John's our entrepreneur in residence here. A former, he got his master's degree here, and he worked for Hewlett Packard, and he started a startup out there in Silicon Valley when we didn't even call them startups. It was just a new business. But anyway, he's done great things over the years, and he's still an investor and a startup guy, and he's also our entrepreneur in residence. But Bonnie and John kind of got us started on this Keene journey a couple, 3 years ago, roughly. I don't know, maybe before. Bonnie couldn't be with us today. She's out doing I-Corps visits because we're an I-Corps site. It's an NSF I-Corps thing, and she's working on that in Missouri. But we are trying to get, membership's not the right word, but we're trying to be accepted into, and we're in the process of that, into the full membership within Keene. But in the meantime, we've got access, and some of you, obviously our speakers today, have been to some of their events. Bonnie and John and I aren't even really sure what benefit beyond what we already have that we'll have if we become members. But Keene's been very, very helpful over the past 3 or 4 years. Always encourages our folks to go to the events and workshops, and you'll hear about some of that today. And I have not been to any of those workshops. I'm just simply, the provost asked me to kind of be the administrative lead person to work with the Keene people and get this membership thing going, and so we're working on that. They talk about the 3 C's. I'm not going to go through this whole handout, but that's one of the main things hey, welcome, come on in, find a seat. Curiosity, connections, and creating value. So I think what the Kern family saw was an opportunity, entrepreneurial stuff had been going on in business schools and other places, but not so much in terms of the STEM disciplines. We were putting out really good technical folks in this nation in the STEM disciplines, but they were lacking what these folks call the entrepreneurial mindset, or at least some of those folks were lacking. And then when you look at things like the SpaceX launch and Elon Musk, you know, yes, Elon is a brilliant STEM person, but he is also an entrepreneur, maybe even more so first an entrepreneur. You look at other big names out there, they are, sure, they're brilliant, but being brilliant's not enough. Being brilliant's not enough. I don't know. It probably helps. I don't know personally, but being brilliant probably helps, but it's not enough. And so that's what the Kern family decided to set up this Keene network and start getting higher education folks, first in engineering, but now just all over the place in terms of expanding this entrepreneurial mindset and getting it into the classrooms. And you're going to hear a little bit about that today from folks who have been to these workshops. I can't remember who all is speaking, but we got 4 or 5 folks, so I don't want to take up any more of the time. So again, and if you ever have questions, shoot me an email, shoot Abby an email, we'll find the answers for you. And hopefully maybe within a few months, the Keene people will be here visiting, looking at our maker spaces and all sorts of things, and talking to some of you all about, you know, how can it help us? And then hopefully we will be invited to join the network officially. But in the meantime, we can go to all their events and take advantage of all the good stuff they've got going on and share the modules and so on. So, all right, thank you. I don't know who's first up here.
Thank you, Jeff. So the 4 folks who have helped coordinate this event are Jill Schmidt, Amardeep Kaur, Dave Westenberg, and Rosa Zhang. So you'll hear from them throughout the event how Keene has impacted their teaching. But to start off, Jill's going to do an activity with us. All right.
Hi, I'm Jill. I think I know most of you, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm in mechanical and aerospace engineering. I'm an assistant teaching professor. I went to the Keene conference, their annual big national conference in 2016, so about 14 months ago now, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great experience. I really enjoyed the conference for the fact that they provided a lot of practical things that you could go do in class pretty much right away, without a lot of work, without a lot of restructuring your curriculum. They had some big ideas too, but they also had a lot of small ideas. And the one of them that I'm going to talk about today is an activity that I think is fun. It's painless. Hopefully it's not too terrible for you. But it's a fun activity that I like to use with my students, and it's really adaptable. I'm going to do a kind of generic version of it today, but I've used it in my aerospace classes with more of an aero theme. I could certainly see you using it in really any type of class, biology, English, anything where you've got lists of things that you could rank by price or date or anything like that. I think it's a good activity. And the reason that Keene really promoted this activity was because it promotes curiosity, which is their first C. So the first C of the 4 C's of Keene is curiosity, and just getting students curious about the field. What's going on? What are other people doing? What type of problems could you solve? And so this one is just kind of a fun curiosity activity that I'm going to talk about related to inventions. And where did the clicker go? Here?
It should be out.
Oh, this one. All right. So the activity, the point of this activity, and it uses this worksheet, the one called Teamwork Synergy Inventions, is to correctly order the 15 inventions from earliest invented number 1 to latest invented number 15. And we're going to do this. It's interesting because it's first an individual activity, just kind of building some curiosity. Then it's going to be a team building activity, working with people at your table. So I think everyone has at least someone at their table, so it should be all right. But we're going to take just a couple minutes to do this individually first. Searching for answers on the internet is not allowed, so no phone searches. Phones go away at this point. And we're going to spend 2 minutes, I'll time it out. No talking, no internet searching. Individually fill in column 1. Do I have a pointer here on this guy? Column 1 for the rank. 15 is the oldest, or 15 is most recent, 1 is the oldest. And do this individually. We'll have team time later, but do your best. 1 is oldest, 15 is most recent for the 15 inventions on here. All right, so you can finish this up as I'm moving along, but now what we're going to do is utilize the knowledge of the people at your table. So we're going to go on and move on to the team column, so skip the one with the delta, we'll come back to that guy. We're going to take now 5 minutes with team discussion, still no internet searching, phone's still away, and discuss, now come up with a team agreed upon rank. Again, still 1 is the oldest, 15 is going to be the most recent.
Like, it could be sneakily.
Yeah, I think I agree. I had it at 5. Because they had modern paper there. I had modern paper and then printing press.
I had hot air balloon.
You have what? Yeah, I have no idea about that.
And you can write them in the actual column, so you can do the math. Thermometer is 6, automobile's 11, hot air balloon is 7, gasoline engine is going to be 8, jet engine is 13, laser is 15, light bulb is going to be 10, magnetic compass is 4, modern paper is 3, power aircraft is 12, printing press is going to be 5, screw is 2, an early one, telephone is going to be 9, transistor 14, and wheel 1. And so the way I typically do this with my students is I show them this guy, and then I have them do some math so they can figure out and score whether they did better as a team or as an individual. Typically as a team is the answer. So the math you're going to do, in order to go ahead, in order to go ahead and score, I want you to get your score right. So what you're going to do is subtract off the your rank from the actual rank. Use absolute values, so positive numbers only. So for example, thermometer, if you put 1 and it was 6, you'd give it a 5. And you go ahead and do this for all of them. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just kind of want to show you how you do this with your students. You do this for all of them, and then at the very bottom, sum up the scores. So sum up all of the deltas in the individual, all of the deltas in the teams. You're trying to get to a smaller delta, so you're trying to get to a smaller value. It almost always ends up that you get that way. So you can talk to students about team dynamics. This is a good kind of team building activity, the utility of teams. But you can also just kind of provoke some creativity. I've done this in aerospace with which plane is the largest. I've done this in mechanical with generic inventions, with different modern inventions, things like that. And students have really enjoyed it. It's been kind of fun. It's one I've liked most out of Keen. So you can kind of see your scores. I don't know if you want to add them all up now, but Abby has directions for adapting the activity.
So Keen is current entrepreneurial engineering network, but it says engineering and they promote that side of things, but I think it is valid for any educator, and the activities or the resources available are applicable to all of us, not just engineers. So Keen Network is supported by Kern Family Foundation. They support other causes as well, but primarily education is their main, force with that they support financially. So, in terms of what their focus is, so according to Keen Network, or this established definition, we want the current engineers to possess entrepreneurial mindset. So that's at the center of everything, the entrepreneurial learning and entrepreneurial mindset, to develop a relationship where students understand that after graduating, they will be delivering something to their clients. And that client could be anybody, okay? But there's that entrepreneurial relationship there, coupled with engineering thought and action. And even though it says engineering thought and action, that's just a thought process, right? So how to engineer things, it's not only relevant to engineers again. That could be applicable to any field. Coupled with engineering thought and action, expressed through collaboration and communication, and founded on character. So collaboration, communication, those again are, some things that we want our students to have, right? We want them to be good at working in teams, good at communicating, doing their fair share, right? So all of those things are again not just valid for engineering students, those are applicable to any of our students. In terms of resources, so the biggest resource I found was just the network of people who were doing things that I'm doing in the field that I'm doing those in. When I attended the workshop, we didn't just have engineering educators, we also have people from non-engineering fields. So, attending one of the workshops or the conferences, the way they do the workshops, they already have you as part of a cohort. So they group you in cohorts with people who are either from the same background or teaching similar courses. That's your choice. They ask you how you want to be grouped. So I chose it to be based on what I was teaching. So I'm in a cohort still, we still interact, we share what we're doing with each other, seek feedback. So that was a huge advantage because you get to know what other people at our peer institutes are doing, right? And you have a constant feedback support structure that way. And since, you usually meet those people in person, so the relationship is very different, and we spend so much time together. You leave as friends, so it doesn't seem like you're bugging somebody for something. It's like everybody's bugging each other, so it's fine. That was my biggest takeout. So I really loved the network that they provided me with, And I happened to be in a cohort group that everybody else is senior to me, so to me that was a huge advantage because they have a lot of experience. They have done some of these things before, so the feedback was really, really valuable to me. And we still interact, and we still seek feedback. So network of institutions in general, and then network of cohort groups that is more valuable to me in person. And then workshops and conferences like ICE, so that's the one I think most of us have attended, the ones that are involved in Keen. So ICE workshop is innovating curriculum with entrepreneurial mindset. And you'll notice there is no engineering in this. So these workshops are for anybody. And the primary criteria is whatever existing curriculum you have without changing too much. So we're not redesigning courses here. We're just incorporating some of the things that will make our students think on entrepreneurial directions. And hopefully will be better in their learning as well. Okay. Other resources, there is financial support to attend these workshops. So far as I know, even this year they will be paying for, you know, any of us to go attend the workshop. And then they also provide some stipend afterwards. So if you develop any group activities, modules, anything to incorporate entrepreneurial mindset into your courses and share it with the rest of the network, right? Or publish, so there's a stipend related to that. And it's a one-year process, so you don't have to do it right out of the workshop. You attend the workshop and then you have a year to develop those modules. And that's when your cohort groups are there to support you. And then they also provide mentors that you'll meet in one of the workshops who are just fellow educators at other institutes, and they've been doing this for a while. You know, so they can provide better feedback. And they're always there to provide feedback on what we're doing. And again, you know, engineering, non-engineering doesn't matter. And they also provide, so, you know, outside of the network, so if you're just planning something, sometimes it's just easier to have some sort of guideline and, you know, keep that reminder in mind that what was their goal to begin with. So they provide with benchmarks, references, things like that, that if you're developing something with this focus, if entrepreneurship is your focus, these are the types of questions, or this is how you should phrase a problem, or these should be the keywords in your activities, or these should be the keywords in, you know, your learning outcomes. And they tackle both sides. They tackle what we want to deliver as educators and also what students should be getting out of it in terms of learning outcomes. And I was noticing, you know, one of the handouts with the workshop details. So if you go through the objectives of the workshop, there is no engineering in that. So it's all general layout, and it's because entrepreneurship, problem-based learning, activity-based learning, all of that is relevant to anybody, engineering or non-engineering. So the fundamental pedagogical techniques of entrepreneurial-minded learning, activity learning, problem-based learning, experience first-hand examples, so that's what you get to do in a workshop, so you get to play a student. Okay? And that helps to recognize what would work in one's course, what might not, because they are going to expose you to a whole lot of activities, whole lot of techniques. Not everybody is going to work for everybody. So you pick what you think would fit into your course, so that way you don't have to start from scratch. You sort of just mold something to fit into your solution. Experience examples of entrepreneurial-minded course integration, analyze unfamiliar situations and open-ended problems. So most of the open-ended problems that I experienced were actually not related directly to engineering, but related to engineering in a way that, okay, whenever you're designing or innovating, it is, you know, inherently part of engineering. So, you know, I was exposed to those sites. Interact as part of an interdisciplinary team, so that is your cohort group. So there are two. One is your smaller group, which may be just your background, and then the whole group that attended the workshop. Okay. Work in content cohorts, so that's just your own group. And again, you know, the 3 C's that we were talking about, so everything is keeping in mind that we are trying to have our students become better learners, right? So we are trying to have better learning outcomes for them. We're trying to make things interesting, and hopefully we're trying to have things click for them, right? So something that might not be achieved by a 50-minute lecture, a 10-minute activity might achieve that. Okay, but again, not everything is going to work for everybody, so, you know, you have to be, and they emphasize on that, you know, so we have to pick what works for us, or, you know, what works for engineering, non-engineering. But in terms of the activities and resources, everything is sort of open-ended. It's not really specifically designed for engineering courses. So it works for, you know, everything pretty much, all backgrounds, just coursework in general. So yeah, that was my introduction, and just I had these keywords, you know, so that's what they emphasize on, pretty much. Value creation, opportunity recognition, and then service innovation. Okay. So for engineering, of course, you know, when we think of engineering entrepreneurs or successful engineers, they have to have all of this, right? So we have to do something that creates value. There needs to be some type of value creation in whatever we do. So as instructors, that could be that I want my students to learn something better, right? In a shorter time span, hopefully, right? So that is value creation. Opportunity recognition. So that's another thing that, you know, we want our students to be good at. So when they are leaving school, they need to recognize what opportunities they have, but they can do that in the coursework as well. Okay? And then service-led innovation. So that's another one of their big emphasis areas, where basically innovation is key, and by innovating something, whenever we innovate something, especially it goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship, it leads to some type of a service to a community. It may not be worldwide, it could be, you know, local, it could be my class, but, you know, innovation leads to service. So all of those are their emphasis areas. So keep that in mind. I think we're good time-wise.
So I was actually over there in the key workshop January this year in Dallas. We were there for 3.5 days. And I was thinking, oh, for 3.5 days sitting on the top of the hotel, the top floor, and looking at the Dallas nice weather, doing nothing. Thinking that it's going to be a good rest for me. But actually, we have to work a lot over that 3.5 days. The most interesting activity that gets me really interested is the Tower of Cards game, and I actually used it in my class this semester as well. So they basically had all the faculty members. I remember we had another one, Nick something, civil engineering, from our school. Also went there, so we were actually in the same group. We were building these cards with tapes and scissors and the ruler, and within a small amount of time, we actually built those, and this is the faculty's build, and it stays there, and this is my team actually come up with this leaning tower. Stand there for the rest of 3 days. So I had the same activity with my class this semester. The first class, I have 75 minutes class. So the first portion of my class, basically I talked about the syllabus and what we were going to cover, and then I gave them the time to build those. And as you can see that the table is not flat, so the student actually did a nice job trying to find a place. One used the floor over here, and another team actually used the windowsill, and this team actually tried to just balance it out. And I actually used the hairdresser to blow them. I try to blow it down with little soldiers on top of those. So 2 teams get finished. The one team did not finish in time. And my takeaway from that is students really get interested in team building, and my lessons learned over there is I did not have enough time to really go over the review. So it's better that you have 3 minutes per team to really review the positive aspect of it, and also share the King Network or the workshop actually provided their review of the best builds. And you'll be amazed that the first year students actually build better than senior students and faculty members. So that really gets the student interested, and I tell the student, this particular class, you will be working a lot. You don't just sit there and listen. And it's a workshop type. You work, I shop. So they get the mindset, the first class, and really come to class and prepare to work. And this is the 4 modules that I plan to make. 2 of them I have already implemented. And this is basically part of this was done during that 3.5 days workshop. So they really get us to think what exactly you want to work on with the module. And they did not expect you to change the whole course completely into the EML-based learning, but you have to attend the workshop, then you have to make at least 3 modules. So I plan to make 2 modules, design 2 modules, and the 2 of them are already finished implementing, and they generate very good interest. I started with this one, this picture. As you can see that Donald Trump repeats a lot. So my first thought was the information contents in there was very little. So I asked the student to try to code those and say how much information contents really is there. My course is actually digital communication. So I thought that's very relevant, but I figured it's a little bit too political of this particular message. So I moved to the 3rd part, which is the next module that I will be implementing. I used the tongue twisters. So I gave them a lot of tongue twisters and asked them how much information you actually have in there. Let them to calculate those, and then ask them if you get this calculated number is astonishingly small. So that's the hook that I give them, and say they normally say, we know that all the texts are coded by ASCII code. Why do we have to code them again? I said, okay, the information content is actually a lot smaller with your tongue twisters, only 3 bits per character. Now you're using 8 bits for ASCII coding. Why would you do that? If you have a stringent communication system to transmit all of those things, then you have to do things smarter. And then we get into the variable-length coding and advanced techniques of coding. And they actually are asked to write a program and code it. So that was implemented very nicely, and they get to use the class time to actually go into the computer and do the coding. So I work around their computers and see if they have trouble with the coding itself, or if they have trouble with understanding the way the coding should be done. Then I just give one-to-one help in the class. So I'm actually building lead sessions for it, but none of the group actually need the lead session time to work on those. And I was actually pretty impressed. The student programming skills are a lot better than 3 years ago. When I first started with the communication class, I provided them with the projects, and all the students just complained so much and say, this thing takes us so much time to code it. And this time, they actually code it very fast. So I basically provided a little bit more workload and say, you have to figure out how much each letter really occurs, how often, and let them to actually figure it out, rather than I gave it to them. And the second module I actually used, so this is basically the summary of the first module, and they really, the king really asked us to look into the 3 C's, what the steps that you provide in these modules link to those C's. So the first C is curiosity. So basically, ask them to figure out the entropy, which is the average length of the bit, very small, and that already creates curiosity in the student. Oh, holy cow, this is only 3 bits. Why do we use 8 bits? Students basically just ask in class that question. And then they figure out how to do it, like provide the handouts and the methods, and they figure out how to do it. So it looks like it's very slow, but actually the way that they actually learn it is actually a lot faster than I repeat. I gave them the instruction and then they repeat it in class and stuff like that. So I found this is a very, very nice tool that let them to ask, hey, and wanting to learn, and I can see the difference, why they are interested and they're learning a lot more than I just fed them. Okay. And making connections is pretty easy to do as well. You have the actual provided ASCII code kind of thing, then why do you do different different ways of coding. Then I provide where are those coding actually used in practice. So the practical system like XML and other type of coding skills. And they actually come and ask, how about JPEG and MPEG? Would this coding actually relate with what we learn in class? And then I tell them, no, because those are lossy coding, and we are doing lossless coding, and those are more advanced topics that you probably learn in the next class. And many of the students probably actually go online and learn those by themselves. So one of the concerns that I had was if you have to incorporate all of these activities, then you don't have enough time to really cover the essential material in class. But this one, I found out that with the same amount of time, actually I can cover enough and more even. And students are actually asking for more with this approach. So I'm quite pleased with the results that I had with the first module. The second module, I changed a little bit on the format, and the module is basically talking about the channel, communication channel itself. So I asked the student to go out like the entrepreneur, interview users of those communication systems. And I asked them to interview at least 2 customers. So I provided some information like Mr. and Mrs. Set team, and the radio club team, and Mass Rover team, our IT department, and many of those on-campus units that they can go and interview. So they actually did presentations yesterday. One team actually interviewed 3, and the other 2 teams interviewed 2 each. And other than the radio club team, which is inside ECE building, so all the 3 teams actually interviewed them. They all interviewed other different teams, different users. So they find out different things from the customer point of view, why this channel is difficult, what are the pains using those. And one of the team is actually pretty creative. They were trying to interview the IT personnel, and they want to find out how Missouri S&T IT actually, what kind of difficulty they encounter. But the guy who were actually trying to interview, give the interview, was on the job for only 10 days. And he was retired or transferred from Army IT or Army personnel to our school. And the student was very creative and just asked, hey, if you know Army communication system better, then why don't you tell us about Army communication system? So they're making extra values out of this interview. So I'm very pleased about what they actually learned through communicating, interviewing customers, and find out difference between all different systems. And I did that in ICOR in 2016, and I was really shy and tried to interview people and get very little information from their customers. And they did such a nice job of digging out information from the customers. So I'm quite happy with this approach, and continue on with the next module and the next module. Of course, those are the things that nobody has done with this particular class. And the purpose of the King network is to get the faculty to be creative for your own class and then share among other people's class. Even with my cohort of ECE in Dallas, nobody is teaching the same thing as I teach. So we get, at the end, upload our modules into the network, the Power portal or something, network portal. So people can actually see those and share those. Of course, people also ask about copyright issues and stuff like that. They are still trying to work out. The major issue, of course, is the assessment issue. How do you really assess the students' achievement? I did use their provided source of team member evaluation form, which is probably also included in the folder. They provide all of these nice forms and nice things to help you and I don't have to do much. And for the report and presentation rubrics, I had it before, so I modify a little bit and just use those rubrics. And I provide the rubrics to the students so they know what they are judged on. And for example, the presentation they did, I actually asked all the students to evaluate their presentation. And then I weight with some of the schools. My weight, of course, will be higher than their schools. Yeah, so that's all what I would like to share. And I really think it's a very nice approach. And I used to really think that teaching enough material is the most important thing, but now I'm totally changed my direction. Okay.
And does anyone have questions for Rosa, Jill, Amardeep, or Dave, who has also been? Dave, did you go to a nice workshop or the conference?
I went to the workshop in the national conference in January 2017 with Jill, and several of us all went together. I was the doping biologist there.
So what is Keene like from a biology perspective?
Very, very good, because it was an education conference. It wasn't an engineering education conference. It was an education conference, even though it was built around engineering, concepts and things like that. But the take-home message I got from every keynote, every session we went to, was the power of diversity of thought. That you can't do engineering just thinking about engineering. You had to have the perspective of the customer, the liberal arts perspective, all the different perspectives that were so powerful for success. Again, universally across the board, every presentation was about that need for diversity of thought, and the welcoming for disciplines outside of engineering was really good. And I got into it because biologists generally aren't thought of. You don't think of innovation and design thinking in biology, but for me, this was kind of a perfect storm. I was at a conference, and I serve on an education board, and I was asking people, how do students succeed? When you're going into careers outside of academia. And I kept hearing innovation, innovation, innovation. And so how do we teach innovation in biology? And so when this came along, that's what we need to do. So I was teaching a class on biological design innovation, and then Julie's now taken over that class. But I realized that our students are limited because they don't think about what innovation and design thinking is. And so this workshop was all about, to me, to see how do I get my students to think as if there's no box there. Not outside the box, just there is no box. So yeah, so it was a very, it was a great experience for me, and it's changed a lot in a lot of things I do.
Other questions?
So for these workshops, do you apply and then you get selected by? Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you go on your own funding, do they take in people like that?
Sure. So you do have to apply. There is like a short proposal, because so you will be working on a course. So you select the course that you want to work on during that workshop. So they sort of, it's a short proposal from what I remember. You just pretty much lay out what you want out of the workshop. They pay for your travel, so they reimburse you until a certain dollar amount. But I think my travel was for $750, yeah.
But they cover the hotel.
The hotel, they'll cover everything of that trip. And then after the workshop, there is, I think, $1,000 of stipend, or $1,500.
My workshop is if you attend the workshop for 3.5 days.
Yes, that's $500 of stipend, and then
3 months we report back,
out. Yeah.
And if they're happy with your performance, then they give you another 500.
And then there's a 1 year reporting.
Report,
then you share the modules. Then you get another 500.
And then you get either another 100,
another 500,
500 or
yeah.
1,000. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's about $1,500 at least. So that's the stipend, just for developing those modules and then sharing out.
Yeah, you don't have to use your own fund.
Yeah.
If you apply to it, normally you will get accepted. They have 4 times a year or something like that.
I remember at least 3.
3 times a year.
3 or 4 workshops every year, and usually I think there are about 30 people in every workshop at least.
So ours was different. So we were at the national conference
right.
where people came to present their
Right,
workshop things. So ours is a little bit different. And Bonnie organized everything. So I just said, okay, Bonnie, I'm going, and she took care of all the rest.
I recently looked at the form that you have to fill out to go to the workshops that are listed on this flyer. And they cap it at 24 people. And so once they're full, they're full. So it's a first come, first serve. So if you're interested, I would apply as early as you can. But if you go on to, if you Google Keen Unleashed, you'll find the website, and you have to register and just give them your name and information, and then all the resources are online, including this flyer. So, other questions?
I was most concerned about the 3.5 days of time.
They go by really fast.
Yeah,
You are
but
busy.
You're really working in there, get a lot of information. And most of my module thoughts was actually developed over there. So you kind of, I choose the January time because it's before the class. Summer, they also have a workshop.
Well, I think that's about it for time, but thank you for coming. Let's thank our panelists and the faculty.